Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is to create a remotable class, which is a DLL which can be invoked over a network. So we'll start with a new project, and we're going to be using a class library, and we'll put it into this folder here. And so let's call it new class. Okay, so we'll create a DLL for us, which we can then call up over a network. Okay, so that creates our new class. So then what we'll do is we'll just copy and paste. Just to save time. And here is our class file. Okay, so we'll try and build that. That succeeded. So let's have a look to see if we can find our DLL. And here it is here. Okay, so this is the class file that we're actually going to call up from our program. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to create the program which will activate the DLL actually on the server. So we'll go for a server activated object. Okay, the object itself will be called showCapital, and in this case it will have a method called show. We'll pass in country and hopefully it will turn back a string from there. So we'll create a little standalone program to activate it. So let's call this new class 2. Okay, so the first thing we do is that we add in our references. So we need to first bring in our remoting. So it's the runtime system.runtime.remoting is the DLL that we need. And then we'll add in our recently created DLL. We should find this in here. Okay, so that gives us a reference to remoting and also to the DLL that we've created. So to save time, what we'll do is we'll just copy and paste. Okay, so this is going to activate the object and listening on port 1234, TCP port 1234, and then it will be a single call to it, so we'll invoke it, it'll return a result, and then it will quit. Okay, so maybe if we have a look here, this is what we're doing. Okay, so the server object is here. This is the program we're creating. It will listen on port 1234, and then next what we'll do is we'll create a client and connect to the remoting system through a TCP channel. And this is what's described as a server activated object. Okay, so that succeeded. So we can run that if we want, but it won't actually do that much because we now need to create the client which will be able to connect to this server. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create the client application which will actually call up the program we created for our server activated object. Okay, so let's go for a basic Windows program. And let's call it just the default name. Okay. And again, to save time, what we'll do is we'll just copy and paste. Okay, so in this case it will create a form, and we'll just add a button to it. Okay, so it's a very simple program. Basically, when the program starts up, it will create a connection with the server activated object program. We register the channel, and then we'll connect, in this case, to the local IP address on port 1234 and call up the show capital object. We'll then get the result from that object. So in this case, what we'll do is that we'll invoke it and start it up, and then this here gives us the call to it using the show method. Okay, so we need to add our references in to the DLL. This defines what the class format is. So we can see now that we can actually see the definition of it. And we'll make sure that we have remoting added. Okay. So we have that, and we just need to add two more text boxes. Text box 1 is the country we're going to ask for, and text box 2, and then that will give us the reply. Okay, just check that we're all set up there. That's fine. Okay, so that's our program set up. We initiate the object remotely on the server, and then when we click the button, we should be able to get the country from the text box. It will call up our remote object, pass the country, and then get the capital city back, and everything should be okay. So the thing that we need to do is that we need to make sure that the server starts up first. so what we need to do is to get this one to start first, followed by this one. Okay, so this will start up the server program on our machine. Normally this would run remotely, and then it will start up the Windows program. Okay, so we can see here there's the server program starting. So we'll just unblock because we trust this program. So just let's find one of the capital cities that's in our object, and we'll go for England, and there we go. So that returns back the capital of the country. So if we try Scotland, it returns back Edinburgh. So we can see here what we've actually done is to create our remotable object. Okay, so we created our DLL. This is our remote object. We created a server activation object program which listened on port 1234, and then we created a client to be able to connect to it. A proxy is created on the client to be able to determine the connection details required for the service to run. Okay, so if we look back, there was our program, very simple object called show capital, and then the marshal by object allows us to return back an actual object, a reference to it. The method with inside that is show, and we see that we passed the value England and it returned back London for us. This shows us the actual server program which activates the object and keeps it running and is waiting for a connection, and then we connected to it with a very simple Windows program. Okay, so this shows how we create a .NET remoting component. Okay, in this part of the tutorial we'll print out a debug message whenever the object is called. Okay, so we'll just add our message in here. So this will display on our console window, and we just build the solution, and I will run it. Okay, so we feed in England, and we should see whenever it calls the object it will show it to the console window, and so on. So obviously we could fix the Windows form here to make it look a bit better. And we could add a text box label. Yep. And we can make this read-only. Okay, so we just make the font size a little bit bigger. Same again. Okay, so there's our very simple debug message. Okay, so what we're going to do in this part is we're going to create a counter, so we can actually see if the object stays persistent or whether a new object is created each time that we call it. So if we look at our call, single call will create a new object every time we call it. So even if we create a call, even if we create an object, then the next time we call it, it won't be the same one. So what we'll do is we'll just create a variable called I as our counter, and then we'll increment it each time we go in, and then we'll just return back the value of I. So it should show us if we're calling a new object or not. So just build that, and then we'll run it. So let's go back. Okay, so this is a single call that we're doing. Okay, so if we feed in a value 1, 1, 1, 1, every time it's a new object that's being created. Okay, so now if we go back, and what we'll do is that we'll modify it so it's a singleton call. So this time we will create one object, and then that one object will stay persistent for the time that the server is running. Okay, so we'll rebuild that. Run it again. So this time feed in. So we can see here that we actually have the same object. It's obviously staying alive and then keeping the value of I incremented in this case. Okay, so that shows the difference between the single call and the singleton. Okay, so we made our communications between the client and the server through TCP, which can be fast, and we can define the ports that we use. But increasingly HTTP is actually used, where we use the SOAP protocol to pass the object. So what we'll do is that, let's say that we want to allow HTTP to carry the object. It'll obviously be slower, but it is likely to be more compatible with the firewall. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll now create an HTTP channel server. And we can go for a default, and that'll be on port 80, but we'll create, just in case there's another server that's running on our machine, we'll run it at port 1234. And then what we'll do is we'll just modify the calling program. Okay, so now we're going to use HTTP requests. That's worked. So we'll just test it. works perfectly. Okay, so HTTP is often used to create XML messages, so we encapsulate our object within SOAP. Obviously this adds an overhead, as all the XML tags adds to the object size. So TCP should be used where we want to optimize for bandwidth and reduce latency. HTTP is very good for allowing compatibility between different systems.